Good morning, everyone. Let's give another 2 more minutes for the others to join. I see some good number of audience who have already joined. Let's give the others a couple of minutes and then start the session. Good morning, everybody. I hope everyone is doing well and staying safe. It's great to have all of you over here on this lovely day where we are going to hear from our experts on omnichannel support and incorporating SMS as part of your omnichannel support strategy. Before we get started, can you guys hear me? Please put in your responses in the chat window. AJ, Sirisha, can you hear me?
Yep.
I get a yes from most of you as well. Thank you so much. Couple of quick announcements before we move forward. The list of questions that we have for the ongoing session today were shortlisted AMA questions that came from most of you. Having said that, at any point of time, if you have any questions, please put in your questions in the Q&A session. We have a separate Q&A session at the end of the session. We'll take all of your questions. This session is a recorded session, so in case if you're missing this session midway through, don't worry. We'll send a copy of today's session across to you in a day or two. Let's get started. Let me start by introducing myself. I'm Prashant and I lead ISV partnerships at Freshworks. I work with technology partners in building solutions and work with few other partners in joint GTM strategies. I'll be your host today. I have Sirisha and AJ today with me. Sirisha from Freshworks. Sirisha, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hello, everyone. A very good morning for the folks who are in the US. So I'm Sirisha, and I am the Customer Success Manager with Freshworks. So I primarily focus is to making sure that my customers are successful using our suite of products. So it's majorly to ensure that you get the value, you really receive the value that for what the product you're paying for. So I'm the product consultant there.
AJ, would you like to go next?
Yeah, good morning, everybody. My name is AJ Chan. I'm the COO at Textline. And really excited to be here and to share more about kind of what we've learned over the years of how to better improve customer experiences through text messaging.
Thanks, guys. Let's jump straight into the session then. Well, we have an interesting stats right in front of you. Omni-channel campaigns that involved SMS at some point in the process were 47.7% more likely to end in conversion. Clearly, SMS is a critical piece here, right? And according to a study by Forrester and Contact Babel, SMS text decreases the price of contact support sessions from $6 to $20 a call to pennies per session. So we can clearly see that SMS is a critical piece to build a cost-effective omni-channel solution. I've been repeating the word omni-channel multiple times right from the beginning. Let's understand from Sirisha on what does it mean to have an omni-channel customer strategy. Sirisha, if you could also help us understand what is the difference between multi-channel and omni-channel, it will be really helpful.
Sure. So when we're talking about multi-channel, so this is something that we've been seeing it from quite some time. It's nothing but companies giving the ability to their customers so that they can reach out to them in multiple different ways or through multiple channels. That could be like phone or SMS, social media. It could be any of them. But the only drawback or the only thing that would be missing is that these channels were never interconnected or they were never connected or integrated really well. And now that has been changed with the omni-channel strategy, not just giving the ability to reach out through multiple channels, but now what people can actually do is the context or the information that they share through one channel can be easily passed on to the other channel as well. So if there is an agent who is trying to reach out or who's talking to a customer on a phone call, and then the same customer reaches out to them a couple of days later through an SMS or through a chat, now the entire context is being bring out there. So now what happens is it enhances the customer experiences. So in this way, agents become more comfortable sharing the information and the interactions are going to be across the channels. And now this ensures that we give in better insights based on what the customers are talking, is being put into the entire experience as well. So just giving you some stats that what we understood is that the conversations will be seamless there. So which is just like from our understanding, we see that 89% of the customers are already being retained by the companies when they move to the omni-channel strategy. And the second important thing is that the entire conversation is more conversational rather than it being very transactional. So, nobody likes being transactional. Somebody reaches out to you, you just say hello, and then directly deep dive into your problem. But then if you already have a context or have some information about it, that's when, customers can see that we've put in the efforts, which is nothing but creating those wow moments or the aha moments, which is the key to any business today. Is nothing but the customer experience. So, and then the entire customer experience is completely personalized. And during these unpredicted times like COVID, everybody really wants to see whether the companies are taking that effort to have touch points with them. And those touch points can be anywhere with social media, SMS, phone calls. It can vary, but all what customers are expecting is that they meet them where they are rather than waiting for them to come to them.
Thanks, Sirisha. I think there's an interesting point that you made there. You need to make customers feel more personal. That's when SMS or social media channels comes into play, right? Now that we understand what omni-channel support is, let's understand from AJ on how to stitch SMS into your customer support solution. AJ, can you help us understand more about how do you stitch SMS into your customer support solution?
Yeah, thanks. That's a great question. I think first you have to really be committed to the customer first, because the texting communication is really personal, right? It's not an email, and in a way, there's more back and forth than kind of a 1 5-minute phone call. I think secondly, you also have to believe that your customer support and customer experience is really a competitive advantage, because support can be more than just a cost center, but it could really be a revenue center. And I think Twilio did a recent study where I think 85% of customers want to have text conversations with businesses rather than just receive information. And I think that really fits nicely into kind of what we do at Textline and what we believe in, where that business texting is really a two-way conversation with customers, and it's more so than just a quick update or treating customers like a ticket. So kind of with all of that being said, I think, if you start with this as your foundation, really focusing on the customer, you can really, make the right decision of how to best incorporate texting, I think one thing quickly that comes to mind is figuring out what channels are best for your business. Because while we obviously are in the texting business, there is a time and a place and a need for each channel, right? And so, each channel serves a different purpose. And I think from a customer experience perspective, just figuring out which channel is best for that situation and customer. And I think, secondly, figuring out what your company's brand tone and voice is. What texting allows you to do is be really personal. And so, that's really a gift from the customer. And so, let's say you're a younger, fun consumer brand, sending emojis, sending gifts, sending photos are kind of more common to that type of fun, personal interaction of text, just like you're texting a friend and family. Whereas maybe if it's you're speaking to a bank or an attorney or something more professional, the tone doesn't necessarily need to be email, but it definitely needs to have a little bit more of a level of professionalism. And so maybe a gift wouldn't be the best, place if a doctor's sending you kind of a photo of your colonoscopy.
Well, thanks, AJ. While you were talking about implementing text, it also reminds me of automation, right? I mean, automation is a critical part, particularly when there are so many customer conversations to handle, right? So, Sirisha, the next question is to you. What do you think about the emerging role of AI or automation to enhance customer experience?
Well, it's a very interesting topic. So about 5 years back, when everyone was talking about automations or probably artificial intelligence, the AI, what we call, all of us knew that it was the future. But what was there in everybody's mind, or the bubble that everybody had, was that it's going to replace people or replace jobs. But let me clarify one thing. So even with things changing, AI is not here to replace the jobs or replace people, but it is here to enhance the entire, the process. It's to make sure that the agents are more efficient with whatever they're going to be doing. So with that entire enhancement, the customer service as an entire org itself took a huge makeover. So from it taking, say, 5 minutes to resolve one conversation to it became now, say, a minute to resolve the same conversation. The entire conversations were more predictive and they became very personalized. So let's take an example. So today I go into a shopping website and I've added few into my cart. And now after a while, I just got busy into something and I've got into an email. But still, if I move on to another site, I can still see a pop-up coming out saying, this is still waiting for you in the cart. So all I need to do is just click on that so that I can go ahead and finish my shopping. So this is how things have changed. Instead of, we waiting to go there and then get the work done, everything is just coming, right in front of us. And that's how personalized it has become, the entire experience. And now when it's AI enabled, the entire insights or the analytics that we're going to put into it is going to be so personalized that, it gives a huge impact on the entire customer experience. Let's take a quick example of how Freddy works in Freshworks today. So Freddy is our AI bot. So it has both agent side and the way it looks at from the customer side. So let's take an example from the agent side. So today I'm going to ask an agent saying, how does this specific feature work? What agent needs to do is either type in the entire answer or look for a solution article and share it with you. But now what with Freddy does is that it automatically gives you the suggestions so that you can just click on it and send it across right away. So from now, you going and, searching for something and then sending it over, which is going to be like a 3 to 4 minutes work, has come down to like a minute work because it's already suggested there. So that's what we are talking about. It's not about replacing anything, but it's about the efficiency at which we're going to do the work now. So that's what AI has the power to do. And that's how it's changing the world. Everybody now wants quicker things and want things to be done really quick. So, and then AI is to the rescue. So it's what it's doing.
Great point, and rightly said, Sirisha. AI is not here to replace jobs. Rather, we can leave the mundane tasks to AI and focus on solving challenging problems. Well, AJ, the next question is for you. Can you probably tell us the popular use cases with respect to texting?
Yeah, sure. I'll kind of highlight, maybe 3 use cases. I think One is, if you think about customer support in e-commerce, it's probably the most common traditional experience for when we need to contact customer support, whether our package has not arrived or package is damaged or we want to return something. And, I think, traditionally, you would call, then maybe email and then live chat, but now there's the option to text. And I think one thing that I kind of want to point out with this use case is that the role of customer support has really evolved into more than just a reactive role, right, when something is wrong, but also a highly consultative role, right? We live in a world right now where if I'm looking to buy a pair of shoes or I'm looking to, figure out what service I want, I'm doing research, I'm looking at reviews, I'm doing all these different things. And so I'm now coming informed to ask questions pre-purchase. And where do I go to? I go to the support team. And so kind of support now is acting as traditional support, as sales, as a consultant, as a logistics coordinator. So it's a pretty dynamic role. And so with that dynamic role, some really common use cases are just, being able to send photos back and forth. Let's say someone says my package is broken or my mattress is damaged and the customer support rep says, okay, so what is damaged? What's not working? Instead of that customer needing to kind of think about, well, it's on like the top left-hand corner of the mattress, there's this stain, and it can go back and forth. And it's actually harder for the customer. They can take a photo because, as they say, a photo can speak 1,000 words. In addition, right, if you're a support individual, you can also send links to customers directly. So if a customer says, hey, I was looking on Instagram and I saw, Beyonce wearing these black heels that were from Stuart Weitzman. Do you have something like that? The customer can say, hey, yeah, or the support agent can say, hey, here's a link. Is this what you're looking for? Or can send a photo. Is this what you're looking for? And so you can kind of get closer to that call to action and enhance that customer experience. So the second one is we see a lot is kind of logistics, especially on the services end, moving companies, delivery companies, curbside pickup, whatever it may be. There's a lot of coordination and back and forth that happens, especially in real time. And what we found is that a lot of folks who are in the field, so to speak, or on, kind of on foot or in between a lot of things, may not be able to actually pick up the phone, have that call, or maybe a phone call isn't warranted just for a quick check-in, right? And so texting is, a much easier way for folks to actually get from point A to point B effectively, because texting has a 95% read rate within the first 3 minutes of it being sent, and so people are seeing these and they're responding at really high clips. And then the last one that I wanted to touch on that we're really excited about at Textline is in the healthcare space. Right, so Textline is a HIPAA compliant texting tool. Quick little plug there, and with that, we handle all of the backend privacy and security, and we also handle a lot of the customer opt-ins. And I think our product team just shared a pretty cool stat where I think it's over 95% of all customers who get this opt-in actually opt in. Right, demonstrating that customers want this communication. And so what we do is we actually protect, the medical practice or the organization who needs HIPAA consent from not breaking any or from not having any HIPAA violations, because we build in a lot of products and solutions that solve that. But all of that in the background to do very day-to-day tasks at a medical office, right? Sending appointment reminders, being able to schedule appointments, following up after an appointment, being able to go back and forth with the doctor, and all of that not living within a cell phone, right? And I think that's where a lot of folks get into trouble, especially in a lot of these regulated spaces. And so we allow the front desk person and the nurse and the physician assistant and the physician to all collaborate together with that texting.
Well, thanks, AJ. Pretty interesting use cases across three e-commerce, logistics, and healthcare. Now, these three industries or rather verticals, the value chain is pretty long, and the customers can, pretty much have any kind of issues. And there are multiple people, like you said, there are field agents, who are there in the field who do not have access to maybe an email or phone call is definitely not the solution. Texting definitely is. Well, now that we understand what omnichannel is and SMS solution is, I thought I'll quickly share with you on how both of our solutions work together. Freshdesk is an omnichannel solution where you can pull your online chat, email. You can bring all of your social media like WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger, Instagram, Twitter. We also have integrations with WeChat, Viber, etc. Phone calls. You can also integrate your calling solutions, CTI integrations, and the SMS, which is the most critical piece, is powered by TextLine. The best part is it's two-way SMS, just like what AJ mentioned. A couple of questions ago. It's got to be a two-way SMS integration, which is pretty popular. The next question is for you, AJ. How to handle large volumes of SMS in big B2B businesses? And the most important thing over here is how do you maintain or rather improve customer satisfaction?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And one thing I'll just kind of point out is that we think about a lot of things in terms of use case, right? And of solutions we're trying to solve. So a lot of, so for this question, how do we handle large volumes of SMS? We see it in both B2B and B2C companies, right? And so, I think for that, I think right off the bat, a lot of customers come to look at texting as a solution because they're trying to scale their customer support, right? Right now, if you are doing live chat or you're doing phones specifically, right? It's real time. I have to be there in that 15-minute window of a live chat, and that 15-minute window of a call, right? And specifically for a call, it can get pretty expensive, right? To be able to support that because one agent can only talk to one customer at a time, right? And so kind of, some of the stats that we see are the cost for every customer call for customer support can be upwards of $12, right, for that support. Whereas for texting, it could be as low as 25 cents per interaction with the customer. And so that right there is because if I'm an agent, I can be having 8, 10, up to 12 conversations we've seen at once with a customer. And the nice thing about it is that customers are able to respond when is best and easiest for them, as well as you as a brand are able to set proper expectations. So let's say I'm flooded with a lot of messages. One thing I can do is tell a customer, let me set proper expectations. I see your question, I understand your question, but let me get back to you in 15 minutes. I'll get back to you within the hour. That buys you some time and it sets that proper expectation where if you're doing a call, the last thing you want to hear as a customer is, yeah, you're going to call me back in an hour. Well, I've had to just set aside all of this time in my day to be able to, sit down, be in a quiet place. I waited on hold and now I have to have this call. So I think, from a dollars and cents perspective, that's kind of a big piece of it. I think we also offer a lot of solutions that allow for automations, not necessarily to create messaging that makes the customer feel impersonal, but to really enhance workflows, whether it's routing conversations or if a customer is waiting for 15 minutes without a response, us letting them know what the right wait time is, things like that. So I'd say that's really from a cost savings and efficiency standpoint, that's a big part. I think the second part, as far as improving the customer satisfaction, is that if you are handling a lot of inquiries, right? You're generally maybe a bigger brand or a bigger company, and a lot of times big brands may feel impersonal to customers, and so texting gives these bigger brands an opportunity to feel more personal. So these customers are more than just a ticket. And I think I think it was a Harris poll that showed that 64% of customers think positively of a business if they have texting as support. And I think a big reason for that is because it demonstrates to the customer that brands aren't scared to have conversations with customers. Kind of internally, we kind of joke that, we don't understand why certain companies don't want to talk to their customers, because we kind of think if you don't want to talk to your customer and your customer doesn't want to talk to you, you're kind of screwed as a business, right? Because they don't want to keep coming back. So, I think that's a big part of it. And, I think one last thing as far as kind of being able to maintain volume and improve customer satisfaction that comes to mind is Along employee retention, right? So anyone who's managed a call center knows that employee retention may be kind of the biggest challenge to all of this. And, there's a lot of turnover, it's a lot of training that's necessary, and a lot of things and a lot of burnout that can happen in that space. And so what we found and what we hear from our customers is that their agents love texting, right? It's a little less stressful than a phone call, right? Someone may yell at me on that call and may ruin things, but with text, it's a lot easier to have both that kind of personal touch, right? While also not being able to kind of have that stress of being on the spot. And, I also think that, texting is a lot easier to train for because we all text, right? We all text our moms, our friends, our family, whoever it may be, and we're just used to it and we're digitally native. So texting becomes like a really easy way for agents to be able to not just use, but also maybe even have a personality, right? If you're the right brand, sending an emoji and being kind of quirky or funny or witty is a big part of why I like to do my job if I'm an agent.
That's a very interesting point from a retention perspective, right? Texting helps agents to be more engaged. Your explanation makes a lot of sense. Throughout we have been talking about contextual conversations, even when Sirisha explained about omni-channel strategy. Sirisha, can you probably explain in detail about what do you mean by contextual conversations? How does that impact your customer support strategy?
Sure. So that's a very interesting question again. So when we're talking about contextual conversations, it's always about like when somebody is starting a conversation with you, say even as a support agent, there must be a reason why they are calling in. And imagine a situation where the agent already talks about why they have called in. And that's nothing but like a wow moment for the customer because he doesn't have to explain everything again, but because somebody already knows his pain and they're ready to help him right from the first minute. So that becomes a huge impact. So that's what it does. Contextual conversations makes the entire conversation very simplified, so that now we can use it in multiple ways. It could be for a sales strategy, or it could be for a customer success strategy, or it could be for a support strategy. When we are looking into sales, the entire buying process is more simplified now, because now you know what your customers really want, or what they are really like, are having some issues or troubles with. You're going to look into that and try to resolve it like super sweet, super quick. And now because of that, as a result, the customer satisfaction is enhanced. So if you see, all these contextual conversations are the ones which end up where you get customer satisfaction scores, the CSAT, or you receive the NPS scores. So which is like the key to the business, because only if you receive them is when the business will understand what to be done with them in future or where they can improve. But imagine a situation where they don't get that. It's something that the businesses are trying to solve in like a dark room. So that's what the power of contextual conversations does. And now it tries to bridge the gap between the customer and the consumer, the customer and the company. So now it's important that the businesses try to get that information. So now how they are trying to do it is, say for a simple example, somebody is trying to buy something online and they're having a small issue with their card, and the card like failed a couple of times or got declined. And now there is a chat being popped up saying, looks like you have a problem with your chat or your card. You can try out these different ways to make the payment. Or if you want to get in touch with the customer care agent, you can do so. So this is the power of contextual conversations. So it's kind of bridging the gap between the customer and the companies, so that it brings in more loyalty, and then it shows in the empathy and the care factor that the companies are putting in to ensure there is a happiness in their customers. So the power of contextual conversations is just not for sales or for customer satisfaction, but it's also for the retention. So only if your customers are retained for a longer period of time, that's when you know that you're, as a business, you are successful or you're doing something right for them. And contextual conversations again help in retaining those customers.
Thanks, Sirisha. That's an interesting point. Contextual conversations definitely help cut down on conversations also, right? I mean, a lot of back and forth, just like what AJ said. If you have context, it's really helpful. Well, this is going to be the last question, and then an interesting question as well, right? what are the common mistakes to avoid while incorporating text SMS as part of your omni-channel support? Before AJ can answer this question, Sirisha, can you probably help us, help the audience understand on what we need to be aware of while implementing AI or working with customer data?
So now from our conversation, it's very clear that we have data across because we are using multiple channels, and then we are able to bring in context, and then now we are being able to understand the reasons. So we have the data across. But what is more important or the common mistakes that we do while integrating or streamlining that into our strategy is that the data unification part. So what happens is because now we have this information or insights coming in from multiple channels, it's important that we stitch them all together in the most optimal way. So that, basically what happens is when we are getting this data, we're going to create a customer profile, a 360-degree or a complete view of customer profile, so that there is no redundancies. And at the same time, the right information is being passed in. So that way, data unification plays a huge role. And that is what companies should be very vigilant about when they're trying to implement their omni-channel strategy. And the second most important thing is the real-time insights. So when having the data is just not enough, but being able to, work on that, create analytics and send in the meaningful insights to the customers or use them in the most meaningful way is also very, very important. So I would say the second most important point is having the real-time insights and those being delivered to the businesses or the agents or the customers in a very timely manner. And the third thing is trying to use that to bring out the business context. So there are a lot of ways that businesses can understand what's working for them and what's not working for them. So using these data points and this insights, it's important that they drive the business decisions and the processes so that they can enhance the entire experience. And the end-to-end operations are more streamlined that way. So these are few common mistakes, or I wouldn't say common mistakes, but are things that we need to be vigilant and be careful about when we are trying to implement that into our strategy. So once the ground rules are set clear, then I think everything on top of that is just an icing to the cake, and the businesses would be able to, perform really well, implementing these small things or taking care of these smaller things.
Thanks, Sirisha. AJ, with respect to implementing SMS solutions, what should our audience be aware of? If you can also talk a little more about compliance and how Textline helps the audience make it.
Sure. Yeah, I think, some of this may be repetitive to what I mentioned, but, I think the first part is making sure that, this is a two-way conversation. I think a lot of companies still see support as something that they want to try to avoid. And by doing that, the customer's putting forth the effort to try to get help, try to fix something, and companies not actually going back and forth, right? I think secondly, kind of to what Trisha mentioned earlier, which is, taking information that you have from the customer to understand what channel or what their communication preference is, right? So, if you may see that, a customer has texted in, right? Simply text them back, right? If you have their phone number now and you know that something may be sped up and that they've been receptive to a phone call in the past, you can follow up with the call. But I think, so kind of with that in mind, not just responding from the customer's preference, but also making sure that you do respond because it is a two-way conversation. And I think with that in mind also, really making sure that once you've determined the proper expectations that you're going to set with the customer, making sure you can meet them, right? And so by doing that, I think, you have to organize your team in a proper manner, right? You're obviously probably managing multiple channels. And so depending on how your team is set up, we see organizations who will have their team members be handling, phone calls, live chat, texting, and email all in one, and they just kind of round robin and handle it. We have other organizations that say, we're going to put text and chat in one bucket together. We're going to put phone as one team and then email as another team. So I think really making sure you can optimize your team and organize your team for that. And, with Freshdesk and, within Textline, you get a lot of data and a lot of metrics to know, what is the average response time? What are your SLAs? Are you meeting that? How much interaction is needed, and to be able to set your schedule and understand load and capacity. And then one little minor thing before I kind of jump into compliance is, I always find this kind of funny, but also kind of makes me cringe a little, is when support teams will respond via text, but write out a text message like they're writing an email. So they'll say like, dear Julia, right? This is AJ from TextLine, and like literally write a 3-paragraph email in a text format. And I just cringe because that's how my mom writes texts, and knowing that that's not the best customer experience, I just, making sure that you're kind of in line with the right medium. And then, so, really from kind of a compliance perspective now, and best practice, I mean, I think kind of do unto others as you wish others to do unto you. So, the dreaded 4-letter S word, spam. Don't spam your customers. Don't text them a coupon. Don't do those things that you wouldn't want yourself to receive. But really text the people who want to be texted, who have opted in, who have where you can add value. If you would pick up the phone and call your customer to give them that information, right? You can text them that. But if you're going to send them a newsletter, you need something you would never call them for, but you would maybe send it via newsletter, then don't send that via text, because that's not a great customer experience. And then, I think going back to HIPAA and compliance, I think, there are a lot of, I like to think of HIPAA light texting tools, right? Either you're not actually able to have a 2-way conversation in your standard texting app, because really what that conversation is a link to another, mobile app portal that's secure. So that's really not in true texting in our sense. And so I think a lot of folks, really think of that as true texting, but we don't. And so from a customer experience, it's actually pretty poor in my opinion. And then secondly, there are other texting platforms that don't really manage the opt-in process, and they really leave it up to the hospital or the front desk manager to say, hey, have I gotten this? Has this person opted in? Have I gotten an opt-in? And if that customer hasn't gotten an opt-in in other tools, you can still send that text message to them and send HIPAA information, and therefore you'd be breaking violation. Within TextLine, we make it, kind of provide all the safeguards and kind of make it idiot-proof in a way where even if you, are trying to send that text message out or try to have that conversation, if you don't have that opt-in and other things set up, then you can't send that, and it protects you there. So I would say those are probably the 2 most common compliance-related issues that we see.
Okay. Thanks, AJ. So for the audience here, TextLine will take care of compliance part. And so with respect to implementations, you need not worry about anything. Well, with that, we come to the end of the session. Audience, feel free to put in your questions. I have 3 questions already. I'll read out the questions. In the meantime, others, please feel free to type in your questions. Well, the first question is for you, AJ. Does TextLine provide hyperlocal SMS texting for regions like DACH?
Yeah, so great question. We work with multiple providers that provide international localized numbers. And so, we have a whole page on our website. I can't tell you off the top of my head, but I'm fairly certain that we've worked with texting in these countries, and in some of these countries. And so I think the best way is to just reach out for the regions that you're most interested in, and we can let you know what's possible. But a lot of the times we are able to provide local numbers, local area codes if they're available, and if not, we can go to multiple providers to try to get that for you. So we're built on Twilio, but we also work with other providers like Nexmo and SignalWire and others who get numbers from different places.
Okay, great. Next question is on similar lines. In countries like India, Middle East, how text support works. Considering that SMS can only be sent one way, the businesses to customers, and not the other way around, right? So I think what the question is, customers working across multiple geographies, right? So how do you handle that? Because in US, probably 2-way SMS is fine, but in countries like India, Middle East, how do you support? Most probably it should be one-way, I assume.
Sure. Yeah, so, there are certain countries that have text restrictions that we can't do anything about, right? So I think in those cases, what we see customers do is send out messages that have information of how to get in touch with the customer, right? It could be going to the help center, a link to the help center. It could be having them contact another number. Another thing that we are working on and that we have rolled out is we also offer support channels, with Facebook Messenger. And I know on our roadmap is looking at, other WhatsApp, WeChat, and other places as well, where it becomes more of a unified communication a source. So I think that could be a way to kind of solve that. The other thing that we've seen customers do, it does get a little pricey, is that they will get numbers from neighboring countries where you can have two-way texting and ask that the customer text that number and go back and forth from there.
Just to add there, yes, because I've seen that and I've worked in India and I know how the SMS things work there. So I've seen that due to trial regulations, initially companies really worry, or they are a little skeptical about sending a blast messages to the customers. But what they follow is, as AJ mentioned, they follow this opt-in process to make sure that they get the buy-in, they get the opt-in from the customers. So post that, they go ahead and use these other channels, like AJ mentioned, like from the numbers from the neighboring countries, or having another form sent out in the message so that they can continue the conversation there. Then off late, I've seen that people even moving towards a little bit along the lines of WhatsApp, because when there are regulations like that happening, so people even try to move towards these other channels which are very similar to how the texting works. But the key to it is getting the opt-in from the customers. So if you are able to get the opt-in from the customers, I think the SMS as a channel has a lot of scope and a lot of personalization, which just enhances the entire conversation.
And just one quick thing about texting that's interesting compared to other digital communication channels is that I can send you a digital communication via text, right? That's that you see, but I also have your phone number now, so I can call you, right? And so if there are issues, I can work kind of concurrently back and forth, where with email or social or other channels, I can't quite do that.
Okay, thanks AJ, thanks Sirisha. Well, I think this question again is to AJ. Do you give an option to choose the carrier telecom provider? I guess more to do with a choice between AT&T or Deutsche Telekom. Do you have that provisioning?
So I will try to simplify this as much as possible, because the telecom world is quite a messy web. I think in short, the way we work is, if you are currently working with AT&T or Sprint or Verizon, or you're working with another VoIP provider, we can use your existing landline or VoIP numbers, right? If you need a phone number from us, we can provide you that phone number based off of area code, or whatnot. And in that case, the numbers come from a variety of different places, so you can't necessarily specify, I want a number that has originated for AT&T. It's actually never come up as a request or a need. What people care more about is, I need to either bring my own number, or I'd like a number with a specific area code or country code.
Okay.
Hopefully I answered that question.
Okay. I'll let you know if there are follow-up questions. Thank you.
Great.
And one last question here. How cost effective is SMS texting compared to other channels?
No, that's a great question, right? I mean, at the end of the day, it comes down to, kind of dollars and cents of these different channels. And so I think I mentioned earlier, right? A phone call can be upwards of $12, what we see. And the reason is, it's because a call could be, 30 minutes, 60 minutes, right? They could get pretty long, depending on, an agent putting you on hold, getting help, going back and forth, right? And that's time, for that agent. And so, I think other channels like live chat are pretty comparable to the cost of text. The difference with live chat though, and what we see is that you have to be able to serve that customer while their live chat box and window is open. So there's a few, kind of more customer experience related things that, can, advantages that texting can provide. I think the difference is texting, can be as little as 25 cents if someone has a really quick question. What are your hours? Where's your help center article? But it could, be kind of the same length of a live chat conversation because it's a very similar medium. I think, email, right, is probably the most cost-effective channel that's out there because it's the ultimate one-to-many. But you would then start wanting to look at what is the true cost of not having that type of interpersonal relationship, that phone number that's really valuable. And then social media as well is another kind of emerging channel within DMs. I think this is a hard channel to put a price on because a lot of times you don't know how much that one person frequents their social channel to get those to respond. You don't know what notifications look like. And so while you may have contextual conversations and a whole map of omnichannel, if you don't respond back for 3, 4, 5 days for something that a support agent is asking, I'm now having to restart and re-look at the full thread, even for an existing ticket.
Got it, AJ. And I have been working with integrating social channels, particularly the ones like KakaoTalk, WeChat, which are more popular in Southeast Asia. And most of these channels have differential pricing, and trying to understand what kind of business account that you need to opt in itself is difficult, right? So yes, it's difficult to find out, or put a price tag when you talk about social channels. And,
yeah, I think the WhatsApp and the WeChats and the Kakaos and the Kicks and all over, those are more messaging channels. So they're like SMS where you get a notification when you get it, and it's a fluid conversation. When I'm thinking social, I'm talking more about like Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. It becomes harder to actually put that price because of the longevity or the duration that goes back and forth with those interactions.
Great, makes sense. Thanks, Ajay. We have a pretty interesting question from Megan. If we already have staff that feels overworked and we cannot keep up with phone emails as is, how do we introduce texting without panic? So I guess probably, AJ, would you like to answer this question?
I'd say first, Megan, just take a deep breath, right? I think texting can be a really great solution first, and I think it could be a real relief. I think, yes, it is another channel that your team will need to manage, right? But I think one thing you can do is start deferring more of those phone calls, right, to texts, right? And so one thing that we see is that there's certain companies that fall in this. One thing they may do is on their support page, instead of putting, call, they'll explicitly say, just put a number to text. So text, 415-555-3333 for support. Another thing is within support emails, instead of putting a phone number there to call, put a number to text. On their social platforms, right? We have customers that do this all the time. They, in your Instagram profile, you can put, contact information as text, right? And so how do you introduce it? I think first starting to make it as an option. Secondly, starting to think about ways in which you can, make that phone number a little harder to access for calls and make texting easier. And then, I think lastly, setting the proper expectations so your team doesn't feel like they are, on demand, on the clock, fulfilling an SLA in under 90 seconds for text, if that can't happen right away. And over time, you can improve those SLAs. And, there are a lot of ways that, maybe Megan, I can reach out to you later, better understand your use case and what you're trying to do, but, figure out how we can, develop a workflow that, reduces kind of more of that noise and allows you to be a little bit more proactive with how you support your customers.
Probably Sirisha, you can add a little bit about workflow setup, and then probably stitching all the solutions together.
Yeah. So I think when we are introducing a new channel, every time it's common that all businesses feel worried about how they're going to reduce. I mean, keep up their resources or how they're going to allocate time for each channel. So that's what happened when chat comes into picture, or that's what happens when live chat came into picture. That could be the same thing when SMS is also coming into the picture. So, but as Asia mentioned, what we really need to do is try to diversify and try to push our conversations. Maybe that happens through phone or that happens through emails. Slowly diversify them into text or into SMSs. So what happens is eventually customers will completely get used to this entire new channel of it, because based on what is very seamless for them, they will try to adopt that first. Say if it's a quick query, I think people would want to prefer having an SMS rather than giving a call and waiting for somebody and talking to them. But if it's something to do with like a lot more of debugging and explaining the entire situation, in that situation, people would choose a phone call over an SMS or a text. So now it's about you giving the ability and opportunity for your customers to choose and pick from what works best for them. So I think from company standpoint, we should always be looking at giving all the options available for the customers, so that they can choose and they can reach out to them in the best way possible. And by doing so, what happens is you are actually dividing your entire conversations, or eventually what happens is all your L1 type of questions, which are quick and can be answered very soon, will be moved towards chats and SMSs. And only conversations which probably need more of debugging, a lot of FaceTime, a lot of conversations will be moved towards phone. So this way you can even define your metrics. Oh, now my L1 questions, or like quick how to's, are being fixed by SMSs and chats, which are more seamless, in specific amount of time, say maybe 5 minutes for each response, or my response time is just 5 minutes. To your L2 questions, or maybe a level 3 questions, which are going to be on call or on emails, they're taking resolution times up to like a day or two. So this way, as a business, you also know your metrics and you define your metrics accordingly. So I think this also enhances the customer experience, because people now have the ability to choose what they want and they will act upon it accordingly.
And one thing just to quickly add on that, with texting, you are able to handle or work with multi-channels at the same time. So, Megan, one thing we see on phone is, this happens all the time. A phone support comes in and a customer, they may be a follow-up question. Hey, can you send me your receipt? Can you send me a photo of what's happening? Or let me send you a link. And while I'm on that phone call, a text conversation is happening to get to that resolution faster. Right? So maybe instead of a 10-minute resolution time, you're getting closer to 6, right? Now that that frees up your team quite a bit there as well. And the omni-channel aspect comes into it. It becomes something where you can now start looking at, okay, when I'm on a phone call and I also am incorporating text with this customer, how quickly are my resolution times versus me just doing phone?
Yeah, that definitely adds to it, because imagine if you've already got the context, or you're able to send in the questions before in the form of text. So you have all the information, and all you need to do is just while you're on a call to go through that and then act upon it accordingly and then finish it up. So always bringing an omni-channel strategy is a win to the customers and win to the businesses. It just takes that little extra step to go ahead and do it. But once that has been implemented, we've seen that businesses get great advantage because of that, and our customers always loved it. And that's the reason why, if you see, as Freshworks, we also completely encourage our customers to go more omni-channel, and implement as many channels as you can, as a business, because that's always a win.
Thanks, Vijay and Sirisha. Megan, I hope that answers your question and helps you and your team as well. We have a couple of more questions. We have 5 more minutes, so we'll quickly take that. Sure. If your customers have opted in, is there a limit to the number of customers you can send a broadcast message before being flagged as spam? Probably a marketing person in AJ, can you please?
Yeah. So like I mentioned, one of the unfortunate things with the telecom world is that it's a black box. They don't tell you, hey, you can send 1,000 texts a minute. You can do all of this, and because of that, right? I think it's hard. It's impossible to give a precise, exact answer. What we've found, though, and what we've built out are ways in which you can broadcast messages. We call them announcements, where you can send one message to a lot of different folks, either across one number or across multiple numbers. If the more numbers you use, the more messages you can send out at one time. I think one of the big reasons why carriers mark certain phone numbers as fraud and spam, one is if customers opt out or ask to stop or unsubscribe on a text, that's a red flag. I think secondly, certain keywords unfortunately trigger the carriers to block numbers or not deliver them. You can kind of think about it as like the spam folder, right? Like Google doesn't tell us, Gmail doesn't tell us, Microsoft doesn't tell us exactly what they're filtering out, but we can deduce or make assumptions that initial text messages that have a link, a $sign, a photo in it are generally spam, right? Where folks say, save X amount of dollars, click this link, right? And I think they're just smaller things like that. I would say that, again, if you're willing to text or have a conversation with one customer for that, and that's the type of message that you're having, then whatever that message is can be broadcasted out to many people. Like a lot of, we work with a handful of like logistics companies that will message out thousands of drivers or thousands of people at a warehouse at a given time to get them information about a shift, about weather update, about something like that. We have companies that are sending out, thousands of messages every hour from folks that are signing up for lead forms on the site, right? We have customers that are leveraging our API that is triggering a text message after somebody makes a purchase or after a product arrives. So I think from a volume perspective, we don't really necessarily see issues unless there is that kind of more blatant spam or spam-like communication.
Great, thanks AJ. Well, that brings us to the end of the session. There's a poll question. Folks, if you could please help us with answering the poll question. Would you like a demo of Freshworks or TextLine?
There's only one right answer, and it's yes, right?
I see a lot of votes, which is great.
Wow.
That's truly omnichannel, right?
Yeah. I think we've got some good work, AJ, now.
Excuse me?
We need to get into this now.
Sorry, I missed that. Can you say that one more time?
No, I was saying, I think maybe we should start getting into the demos now. We've got good response.
Yeah, I mean, I can skip lunch. That's not a problem.
Great. While people are answering that, there's one last question. Do clients have the ability to refine metrics and turn on off when that is time to respond is being measured? I'm not sure if you're referring to a channel in particular, but then AJ, with respect to SMS?
Yeah, that's a great question. I know that right now, we, I believe, don't allow that, but it is on our metrics roadmap. I guess I also don't fully understand the question, but I assume it's, during business hours, 9 to 5, you can track and measure, response times versus it just being a 24-hour clock. That is something that's on our product roadmap. We can't offer that now, but we do work with, a lot of companies who want this data. And, this person sounds like a very data-driven person, maybe at a data-driven company. So if you have a BI tool, you can leverage our API to pump in that data. And I know that's how larger call centers are tracking that.
Okay, great. I think if it's stitched to Freshdesk, you can have this configured with Freshdesk. So
Yeah. So if it's more to do with
yeah.
the business hours and making sure that, how your customers are reaching to you within the time, within the time zones and within the time differences, I think with Freshworks, you can set it up. But even otherwise, if more from the agent perspective, we always have, few statuses and few statuses, the ability to mark them such that, you're waiting on customers. So where you can freeze your SLAs and you can start the timer on, or making sure that the timer starts ticking in again based on the conversation when it starts and when it's not on a live conversation or on an active conversation. But yes, so from my understanding, if that is what is required, yes, from Freshworks, all suite of products, that's something that we have it.
Great. Well, let's end the session. We almost up. Thank you, Sirisha and AJ, for being part of the session. It is really insightful, and I'm sure our audience today would have had some takeaways from the session. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Have a great day. Take care. Stay safe.
Thank you so much for hosting and for everyone joining.
Thank you, everyone, and have a good day.